This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski, featuring body language and human behavior expert Mark Bowden.
Rex Heuermann, another case that we follow really closely here in the U.S. What's been fascinating to me, even more than Rex, is Asa, his wife. That is one I'd love to get your feedback on. She hasn't given many interviews. There's been things here and there where, she's shooing people off of her property. I know, she has, 50 Cent and G-Unit there now doing a documentary. And God knows they're just trying to create another version of the Jinx at the end of this. Get another Robert Durst moment. But I am really curious about her actions and what she said, the way she acts. I mean, she claims to have no knowledge whatsoever that her husband was doing all these things for all these years. I mean, they lived in this hoarder type house where he's collecting guns and child porn in the basement. I find it shocking that she has no clue any of this, or that at the very least that he's not having relations with sex workers. But what is your take on Asa? Is she just the spouse victim who really, was clueless to all this that was going on? Could she have possibly been involved in some of this? I don't know. There is some evidence to point that there's hairs of her on some of the victims. I don't know. There's a lot there.
Yeah. Interesting. I've not looked at any interviews with her, so I can't speak to that. But to your description of her behavior, let's just suggest that description is accurate. I have no reason to believe that you're not being,
sure,
that's not a decent
big
description
lie
of it. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? You say, she already lives somewhat within what maybe you and I and others would say is a pretty chaotic environment. Hoarding, which my expectation of that is it's hard to see anything when there's so much there. There's so much there. Yeah. Is it her hoarding or his hoarding?
I'm going to guess I have no idea. I would guess probably a combination of the two. I mean, but they have a level of, or had a level when they were both living together of comfort with filth, with living in a home that, would essentially be something you'd see on Hoarders.
Yeah. So look, here's the thing: is if we take hoarding as being a mental illness, which I think most people would go, okay, there's somebody isn't well, there. What are many of the usual things that you and I would catch that she just isn't going to be able to, just not on her radar? Because think about her radar.
Yeah.
Think about what her mind is. Our mind, there are just billions and billions and trillions of data points in the universe that we can catch, but we catch so few. Why? Because we have things that are important for our attention. What is important for her attention in order for her to live the life that she believes will help her to survive in this universe? Well, we've got this idea that she's gonna keep stuff.
Yeah.
Well, then if you're keeping so much, if your attention is there, where isn't your attention? So there's that. So that it could be true. She just doesn't see it. Where you and I would go, well, it's obvious.
Yeah.
Her be like, I can't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
Here. Now, to my earlier point, when are lies useful? What is it about her existence with this partner that keeps her surviving, allows her to live that life, which has a level of comfort for her? She might be in mental distress, like she's there every day and she's surviving. And so what lies of his is she going to be willing and needing to accept in order to keep that? Because who else does she live with? Like if she goes, you know what, I can see that you're a serial killer, and that's not acceptable to me. So I'm going to move out and I'm going to tell the police about you. So there'll be no income for me anymore. And I'll lose this home, but it's okay because I've got loads of other friends who I'll start living with them, friends, family. I will be taken in. I've got around me a really soft landing. Because I've kept my relationships up with so many other people. I don't need you. And so I refuse to accept these lies anymore. There could be an element of that. She cannot refuse to see the lies. The lies are useful to her survival. So one, yeah, you're right. She can't see them. It's a potential. Two, she has to look past them in order to survive. Three could be, yeah, she's complicit. It's possible, though as probably you well understand, hares can make their way.
Yes, and especially in a hoarder house. Yeah, there's probably hairs on literally everything in that house, to be completely honest. So for it to make its way out on a burlap sack over the head of a dead individual, not necessarily rocket science, so that could take place.
Yeah. No, I agree, but clearly there's some mental illness.
Sure.
Going. Well, I mean, everywhere. I mean, it's that's a partnership, both of which have mental conditions.
Yeah.
One of which means you have to go to prison.
Sure. Let's talk about Rex for a little bit. Obviously, he hasn't spoken much at all. In fact, I don't think he's spoken other than like yes and no's in court since his arrest. But he did give an interview about his architectural firm on YouTube prior to any of this coming to light. What was your observations on Rex from what we did know about him when he was publicly speaking to people and being more verbal and just being out there?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about that interview, which has become almost kind of famous, I guess, is that thing of, look, you aren't going to see that somebody is a psychopath, sociopath, serial murderer when they're being interviewed about their architectural business. I mean, it's just like, you're not interviewing them about the area of their criminal acts, their antisocial acts. Go on a date with him and you might start to go, hang on, this is not feeling good. Interview him about his architecture. Yeah, you're going to have, his business. You're going to find somebody who you go, okay, this guy is very, very ordered. Yeah, very, very ordered. You see it in his gestures as he's talking. There's an order to things. He's very boundaried. He puts boundaries around stuff. He barriers stuff. So he says, look, there's this order to things. There's these compartments to things, and they must be in their compartments. And it's what we would call very, very systematic, the way he physically describes things. Okay, well, does that say that we've got somebody who's a serial killer? No, it's somebody who could certainly work with a bureaucracy, and he does. So we see that we see suppressive gestures as well on specific when people aren't doing stuff that he thinks this is the way the system works, and he'll get very arrogant. His chin will come up when he feels somebody doesn't understand, or they should understand the system because they invented the system, this system, but he knows it better than them. So he can mold people into this system better. He'll do these downward palmed, suppressive gestures. So we do see he'll have stories about literally moving people out of his way when they're not following in a smart way the bureaucracy and the system that's been set up. So it's a very, very strict way of thinking. So you've got this interviewer who you can see is way more flamboyant.
Yeah.
And much more grandiose with the gestures and fluid with the gestures. And he's laughing at this because he's going, wow, this guy is so systematized. How do I fit in with him? I want to design buildings and I want to do this thing. And then this guy just needs to fit things into a box.
Yeah.
So we can, from his behavior, see a lot about his temperament and his the way he feels the world should run. And then if we were to put that within an environment where he's not getting the success that he wants, what would he have to do to take control of that lack of success in that environment? Anyway, I hope that
it does. It's like there's a template to it, and with this template, how would this fit over in a different situation? If he's not talking about architecture, if he's putting this into another place in his life, would this man's personality fit that of which could be a serial killer?
Look, certainly, let's just say, look, there's suppressive and narcissistic elements to the way he's behaving. But like that's me some days. And just so you know, I'm not a serial killer. So
well, judging by your movements, actually, Mark, I'm going to have to disagree because I'm going to tell you.
Well, until you can bring the evidence, we'll just suggest that I'm being accurate right now. Look, there's this element in all of us at certain times,
sure.
So no, it's impossible to say from this interview that you have somebody who's capable of multiple killings.
Okay,
it's just impossible to say. Anybody who looks at that and goes, "Yeah, of course, you can see it there."
Yeah,
it's like no, that's nonsense. Now, of course, as I've heard from some, or certainly one person, they went on a date with him and it felt wrong.
Yeah.
Now, again, that could be a negative bias. It turns out to be like, that was good that your instinct went so negative at that point that you went, I gotta get the hell out of here. I gotta get, you were accurate in that situation, but something felt wrong about being in that kind of risky date environment, because that is a risk. You're meeting somebody blind.
Yeah.
You don't know who they are. You don't know their background. That's high risk.
And that's where our intuition is that what we're picking up on is incongruencies in behavior, when we kind of have that gut feeling of like, I don't know, there's something not right about that. I mean, he was talking about the Long Island serial killer on the date. That's kind of a
well, okay.
red
So
flag.
there's a great example, isn't it? He's being interviewed there in the interview that we see on his architectural compliancy bureaucratic business, and he doesn't bring up the Long Island serial killer. Like, okay.
Must be a sign.
Now, if he did,
yes,
you'd be going, well, how does that fit?
Yeah.
Like, why? What is your obsession with that you've made this link between this, and now he does talk about tools to get your own way. The hammer. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Where potentially we could go in hindsight. Though, at the time when I first saw that, and he hadn't been, we hadn't had the interviews with the police at that point. I thought it was very interesting that he chooses that tool and describes exactly around how I guess things that aren't complying must be physically moved into compliance. Essentially, it's kind of very it was telling at the time, and I did say to the guys on the show that probably using some kind of blunt weapon of some sort, using something very very blunt and physical to get his way on this. I would imagine. Anyway, I can't remember what the first.
No, yeah, I mean, just so fascinating, overall to understand this and to get your insight into all this, Mark. It's been so great having you on. Thank you for coming on and sharing your insights into to the body language and the behavior of these people that we look at every single day.
My pleasure, Tony. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.